Dans la capitale des universités, une télévision s'installe. Télébeltorbe, la télévision de l'information.
And welcome to another edition of Political Period.
Wap gérer santé ya, wap gérer la vie ya, parce que santé c'est richesse.
Diversion, en pile question à poser aux observateurs, est-ce que son façon pour le président américain?
Télébeltorbe, c'est la télévision de l'éducation.
Nous nous connections avec toute activité communautaire.
Télébeltorbe, la télévision de la spiritualité.
Thank you, Jesus, for you set me free.
Télébeltorbe, c'est la télévision de la distraction.
Malgré tout, avec la voix de Tiancito.
Télébeltorbe, très bientôt sur Roku. Télébeltorbe, c'est la télé.
Good evening. Welcome to the road to the primary election in Boston. As we're approaching to the local primary election on September 14, 2021, it'll be a Tuesday, Télébeltorbe will take the lead by tackle the real issues with the candidates. Today it's an honor to have in our studio Boston City Council at-large candidate Erin Murphy. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Good to see you as well.
Me. Yeah.
It's scorching hot outside.
It is very hot. I was just at a cookout in South Boston, so I was glad that I was coming inside.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, no,
thank you. I
thank
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let me start with this. You were a former teacher. Tell us
Yes.
about the experience you had for
For
20 years and 10 months.
20-something years.
Yes.
Yes, a while. So I often tell people too, when people say, why are you running for city council? I say it's for the exact same reason. I was a public school teacher in the city of Boston for over 20 years. I care about the children, I care about the families, I care about this city and helping us move forward. So most of my years I was a kindergarten teacher in the city of Boston, right in the same neighborhood in Dorchester where I grew up. And really just advocating for and supporting my families and my students for all these years. It's just been a wonderful career, wonderful job. In the last few years, I've been a special ed coordinator, so I've been working on, writing the IEPs and supporting families, making sure not only that they have a strong IEP for their students who need them, but also making sure the services are being delivered. And through COVID, we know it's been a struggle, right, for so
everybody.
many, right, for every student with remote learning and hybrid. And, I'm just praying that in September that the students are back because it's been really hard on them and the teachers. So,
Okay. What is the core value of your campaign?
yes. I'm just someone who works hard and cares about people. And I say that all the time, that I'm just making sure to campaign in every neighborhood, get to know people. And when they do and they see that I'm in it for all the right reasons, I say I'm in it for the same reasons I was a teacher. It wasn't for the glory, it wasn't for the paycheck, it was for helping others and, really lifting up people's spirits and making sure they feel like the city is working for them also. That no one feels like they're being left out. We're such a rich city in so many ways, but then so many people feel like they're not, benefiting from all of that. So making sure that every neighborhood, every person, every family feels like the city is working for them also. And I'll be that candidate, like that go-to candidate. City councilor, when you call, I'm going to pick up, I'm going to show up in the neighborhoods, I'm going to make sure that if I don't have the answer, I'm going to find out who does, right? Making sure I listen and learn from everyone.
Listen and learn. Yesterday, the mayor, King Jamin, said the vaccine mandate for all the city employees.
Yes.
Do you support that?
So as a teacher, I was one of the first to be able to get the vaccine, which I did. We need to get kids back safely, and I do know that many neighborhoods have low vaccination rates, and I think it's our job as city councilors and as neighbors and neighborhood advocates like myself to make sure that we inform people about the vaccine so that they're not afraid to get it and they really understand the facts. Because I do see, like in Mattapan and other neighborhoods, we have really low vaccination rate and trying to find out like why are we not getting vaccinated, and if they're afraid of the vaccine or they have misinformation, I do believe it's our job to deliver that information. I don't want people to be left out of the basic city services because they chose not to get the vaccine, so I think it's a fine line, and we really have to see if we can get into the neighborhoods where we have low rates and find out like why are you not getting. I was at the Mattapan Hope Day. There was one in East Boston with the health centers. I think are doing a great job connecting with people, but sometimes only 12, 15 people show up and they're happy, which is great, but really if it's knocking doors, like however, going to churches, community events, like really making sure we're finding the people, right? We're not waiting for them to come to us, because as we know, that doesn't happen. I think it's our job to proactively go out into the neighborhoods and really talk to the people and find out why.
Okay. Also, the mayor mentioned if you don't take the vaccine, you have to go to a weekly testing.
Yes.
Where's the money coming from for those testing? Would you questioning her about the
Yeah,
fund?
like how are we going to fund that?
Yeah.
And so in school, the school I was at all year, I was in person all year, and we did have pool testing. It was optional. Most people did participate in it, and there was funding from like federal money at the beginning. So I would question like, is that coming out of city money, or is this federal money with the CARES Act and other COVID money? That would be important to know.
Awesome. Boston is a city for tourists to come as well to enjoy the doctor, everything. But we have a big crisis in the city, homeless crisis. We have a lot of students, they are homeless as well. If you are elected, what is your plan to address the problem of homeless in the city of Boston?
Sure. As a school teacher, I saw firsthand the disruption homelessness causes so many families. There'd be students who would have, they'd be in one housing facility or, one neighborhood, and then they'd be moved because of the insecurity, so they'd have to change schools, or the parents, didn't know like where they would be the next month. So we absolutely need to address that. It interrupts so many kids' education, which we know is so important to make sure that our children have a stable, safe education in every neighborhood. I have lots of ideas. I'm a renter in the city of Boston. I'm one of the few candidates who doesn't own a home and actually rents and knows where I've been raising my children here in the city also, in Dorchester. So I understand the stress so many people are facing with the rising cost of rent.
Do you support rent control as well?
I don't support rent control, but I do support like coming up with different programs for the city and making sure that affordable housing units, like what does affordable mean? Because many people work 2-3 jobs just to make ends meet, and they're making a little extra money just to get by, but then they make too much money to be able to be considered for like housing or these first-time home buyer programs. So to really adjust the income ranges so that people who are like the working class families who are, trying so hard to make it, but I know people who have, work overtime and then they're told, well, don't work so much, or they pick up a second job and they're told, well, if you just made a little less, but if they made less, they wouldn't be able to get by. So it's really hard. One job should be enough in the city of Boston. And I think it always goes back to the education, making sure that every kid is getting the type of education in the public schools that they deserve, that when they're graduating, moving from middle school, that they're getting into a quality high school, and that when they're graduating high school, college does not have to be their path. If it is, great, and we'll support that. But if it's a union job or, just preparing our youth for quality jobs, that they're not getting passed by on these union type or, high-paying jobs.
What long-term permanent solutions do you have to address housing instability in the city of Boston now that we have a new influx of federal funding?
We do, and we have to make sure we watch where it goes. I do know many neighborhoods, I'm at neighborhood association meetings and others where people feel like they're not part of that process, or where is the funding going? So to make sure that we are, when we're building, we're increasing the number of affordable units in our new building, and that neighbors have a say in it. Oftentimes neighbors feel like, the housing that's being built around them is not matching, or they're being priced out of. There was a neighborhood I was at where 100 new units came around the corner, and everyone in the room said no one could even consider to afford it. So to make sure that people don't feel like they're being priced out of their own neighborhoods. Also for seniors who are feeling like, the increase in taxes and others are just hard to even keep your home in the city. So we have to address that. Looking at the empty lots. We have, over 100 empty lots in the city that aren't buildable by developers, but the city could build like 100% affordable housing in these units, these, lots around the city. There's different ways like we can look at to really address this problem long term. Like you said, it can't just be a quick fix.
Yeah.
We have to think ahead and how is this going to impact.
Okay, let's talk about the Green Deal making headlines. How would you create green jobs for the Boston residents once you are elected?
Sure. I think it ties into Madison Park High and our vocational high school, which needs a lot of help. We have empty seats there, and we have many families who don't feel like that's the best choice for their child, or their children don't want to choose that as a high school. I do think that we really need to invest in making sure that we have, a top-notch vocational high school in the city of Boston, so that we're training, our youth to have these jobs for the 21st century that are really training them to properly be prepared for, these Green Deal and all this new. Like I was at the Plumbers Union Hall, and I was in their training facility, and they were showing me all the new things they had to update in their training facility because they had to, come up to code with all the new code and retrofitting buildings. So it was like a whole new process to train their apprentices because it's a new job for them now. So to make sure that we're preparing our students so they're not being passed by. We don't want people coming in from, other neighborhoods. If city kids can get these city jobs, we really want to make sure.
So would you support other funding for the high school to have vocational training for young students?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
So I do believe, college is a path. It shouldn't be the only path. We let our children know. I was a kindergarten teacher, and I often tell the story how many schools have a college day where the teachers will proudly wear the T-shirts from whatever college they attended, and I would always wear my dad's union T-shirt, and they'd be like, "What college is that?" I'm like, college isn't the only way. Maybe you want to go into the laborers union or take the pathways, into to be an electrician or a plumber. It's a great job to have, and it's a good, safe job.
Okay, let's talk about transportation. Traffic very at this time in Boston. Traffic jam. The average commute in Boston is 28 minutes. Nothing less, 24% of Mattapan residents have a commute of over 60 minutes. How would you address transportation inequity?
Yes. So I did say there was a brief moment there during COVID where if you were driving, there was no traffic. And you're like, oh, this is how you should be getting around the city.
I remember that time.
It was nice for about 2 months. As, thankfully, as, it was lifting and more people were getting out into work, we're like, oh, traffic's back. So there's the traffic when you're driving, but like you mentioned, there's the transportation. So many of our neighbors, in the inner city here in Mattapan and other neighborhoods across the city take the T. And like you said, for some people it can be 60 minutes. Or they say, don't drive your car, take the bus. But if you're waiting 30 minutes at the bus stop and then you're late for work. So making sure that we're looking at the number of bus routes. I know they're putting in bus lanes to try to make sure that the buses routes, that they're not extending the time on the bus route. But I know like at Forest Hills and other stations, there's certain buses where if you see it, like there's 100 people waiting for one bus, and then there's like 4 people waiting for another. And that bus, I live off the Red Line, and I remember growing up and I'd be at Washington Station and there'd be 2 Braintree and then an Ashmont. I'm like, how come there's more Braintree? There'd be like 2 more Braintree come and they'd be half empty, and then everyone would be like smushing into the Ashmont train. So to make sure that we're looking equitably at the routes and how many, bus routes and
There's a big income gap in the city. The median net worth of Boston white household is $247,000. The median net worth of Boston US black household is $8. How would you address persistent poverty, wage gaps, and rising income disparity?
Sure. And along with that statistic, they always talk about how the number one reason for that is home ownership. And so if we are making sure we're at a young age and implementing financial literacy in our schools, I think would be important to put a curriculum in. So we're teaching kids at a young age, like, the power of
money,
saving and what it means, right? It's like I feel sometimes they purposely never taught us that in public schools. So to make sure that every child is getting that access. and also the programs in the city, if it's the first time home buyer programs and others, like helping with the down payments or loans for, first time home buyers would be very important. And to understand like how that really matters, right? You buy a home, because a number is just a number, but if we really talk to people and like have workshops and others to explain like why home ownership is so important if you can, and like making sure we're doing everything to help people buy homes.
Okay.
Yeah.
During campaigns, candidates always making promises.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Today, you're on Telebeltop.
Yes, I'm right
Why
there.
the Asian American in
Yes.
Boston should vote for you. Look at the camera
will.
and tell them.
Okay. I believe that I don't deserve anybody's vote, but that I am working hard. I'm out there every day in every neighborhood, making sure that I'm talking to people, sharing my story. I am born and raised in the city of Boston. I was born in Dorchester, where I've raised my children. My youngest will be a senior in college this year, so my oldest will be 32 next month. So I've been a mom, I've been a school teacher in the city of Boston for over 20 years, advocating and supporting families, hundreds and hundreds of Boston families. I'm a community advocate, and I'm someone who's a hard worker, and you can trust me. And at the end of the day, I really think if you give people a reason to show up at the polls, if they know that this person like myself, Erin Murphy, is going to make sure she learns, she listens, she shows up, and I'll be that city councilor who, once elected, you can call our office if you have concerns, if you have problems, if you have community events you want me to attend. It doesn't have to always be needing something like sharing in your heritage and your things that are going on in your neighborhoods are important to me. So I'm running to be a city councilor who represents the whole city. I'm not just running for a district seat, I'm running to be an at-large city councilor for that reason.
On September 14, the D-Day for the primary election,
Yes.
I report, you decide. The ball is in your hand. You choose who to vote for. My name is Erlich Dorelas. Have a good evening, everybody.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.